Somewhere in America right now, a casino is quietly losing money, defaulting on a loan, or watching its slot floor empty out on a Tuesday afternoon. Most gamblers walk right past the warning signs because a casino's whole job is to look like nothing bad could ever happen inside it. But behind the neon, the math doesn't lie. And for a growing list of properties, the math has stopped working. So today we're counting down 7 American casinos that will close next to figure out which one dies first. Number 7. Coushatta Casino Resort. Let's start with the one that might surprise you, because on paper, this casino is doing fine. Coushatta Casino Resort, run by the Coushatta tribe of Louisiana in the small town of Kinder, is projecting an EBITDA of roughly $86.8 million for 2026. That's a healthy, profitable number by any normal business standard. So why is it on this list at all? The answer is a $150 million hotel tower called Legacy, financed largely through Wells Fargo, which opened its doors on May 15, 2026. 8 stories, 204 guest rooms, 100 of them suites, and a porte-cochere entrance designed to make arriving guests feel like they'd wandered into somewhere considerably fancier than rural Louisiana. It's the kind of expansion casinos build when they're feeling confident about the future. Except internal documents obtained by industry outlet casino.org paint a very different picture behind the scenes. The resort reportedly needs an additional $40 to $44 million just to finish paying for costs already incurred on the project, and leadership has recommended freezing hiring, cutting overtime, and slashing non-essential spending to avoid breaching the leverage ratio tied to that legacy tower financing. In plain English, that means the casino borrowed against its own future earnings to build something shiny, and now it's scrambling to avoid tripping a financial alarm that could hand more control to its lender. A top executive at the property described the situation to casino.org in blunt terms, calling it a serious financial situation. Coushatta isn't going to shut its doors next month. The gaming floor is still busy, the revenue is still real, and the tribe has other resources to lean on if things get tight. But when a casino generating close to $90 million in annual earnings still has to freeze hiring because of a single hotel tower's debt structure, that's not exactly a picture of stability either. It's the kind of story that looks fine from the parking lot and considerably less fine once you see the spreadsheet. There's also a structural wrinkle that makes tribal casinos a slightly different animal than commercial ones on this list. Because Coushatta Casino Resort is operated by the Coushatta tribe of Louisiana rather than a publicly traded company, it doesn't file the same kind of quarterly earnings reports that let outside analysts track its finances in real time. Details like the ones reported by casino.org typically only surface through internal documents or direct reporting, which means problems at tribal-owned properties can sometimes build for longer before the public gets a clear picture of how serious they've become. That's not a criticism of tribal gaming as a business model, which remains enormously successful nationwide, but it does mean a property like Coushatta can go from quietly tight on cash to genuinely at risk with less advance warning than a publicly traded competitor would generate through its own disclosures. Number 6. Golden Nugget Atlantic City. Atlantic City's 9 casinos don't usually make headlines for losing money, at least not collectively. But the first quarter of 2026 was rough across the board, with the city's casinos posting a combined gross operating profit of roughly $104.7 million, a drop of nearly 23% compared to the same period the year before. Rising operating costs, not falling revenue, did most of the damage. And right in the middle of that downturn sat Golden Nugget Atlantic City, one of only 2 properties in the entire market to report an operating loss for the quarter. That's a notable fall from grace for a brand that usually punches above its weight thanks to a strong online gaming business layered on top of its physical casino floor. Golden Nugget, owned by Fertitta Entertainment, has leaned heavily on internet gaming revenue in recent years to prop up results from its brick-and-mortar operations. When even that combination can't keep a property out of the red for a full quarter, it suggests the underlying foot traffic and spending at the physical casino itself has gotten genuinely thin. To be fair, one bad quarter doesn't sink a casino, and Golden Nugget has the financial backing of a much larger corporate parent behind it. Nobody at Fertitta headquarters is drawing up closure paperwork based on a single rough quarter, but Atlantic City as a whole is bracing for new competition from downstate New York casinos in the coming years, and a property that's already bleeding red ink in a relatively normal quarter doesn't have a lot of room left to absorb a real shock. Consider this one a slow leak rather than a burst pipe for now. The contrast within Atlantic City's own market makes Golden Nugget's stumble look even more pointed. Borgata, owned by MGM Resorts, posted a gross operating profit of roughly $237.4 million in the same period, a 14% gain year over year, cementing its position as the clear market leader on the boardwalk. When one casino in a 9-property market is pulling in that kind of profit, while another 2 are posting losses, it's a reminder that Atlantic City isn't really one economy. It's 9 separate businesses competing for the same shrinking pool of visitors, and not all of them are built to win that fight. Number 5. Bally's Atlantic City. If Golden Nugget's Q1 was a bad quarter, Bally's Atlantic City has had a genuinely bad couple of years, and industry watchers have started saying so out loud. In 2025, Bally's was the only casino in Atlantic City to post a gross operating loss for the full year, with operating profit collapsing 210% into a net operating loss of about $2.8 million. That came despite a $100 million renovation completed in 2024, the kind of investment that's supposed to turn a struggling property around, not accompany its worst year on record. The first quarter of 2026 offered a small silver lining, with Bally's narrowing its loss to around $862,000, an improvement over the $3.2 million loss it posted during the same stretch a year earlier. But narrowing a loss still isn't the same thing as making money, and Bally's remained one of just 2 Atlantic City casinos operating in the red during that quarter. What makes Bally's Atlantic City particularly interesting on this list is that the company's own leadership has started publicly floating the idea of doing something else with the land entirely. At an industry conference in April 2026, Bally's chairman Soo Kim gave a presentation suggesting that certain properties along the boardwalk, including his own company's casino, sitting on the historic Park Place and boardwalk intersection made famous by the board game Monopoly, might be worth more as something other than a casino. Kim told the audience there isn't a single stretch of beach property in the country that couldn't support an amazing beach experience instead. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of the gaming floor's future from the man who owns it. Bally's is simultaneously pouring billions into a brand new casino development in the Bronx and fighting to keep a temporary casino open in Chicago, which we'll get to shortly. When a company's attention and capital are stretched across that many fronts, and its own chairman is publicly musing about turning the historic property into beachfront real estate, that's usually a sign the current business isn't the priority anymore. It's worth remembering what Bally's Atlantic City actually represents historically before writing it off entirely. It opened in 1979 as the 3rd casino in Atlantic City's history and once led the entire market. Bally's occupies 83,000 square feet of gaming space on some of the most recognizable real estate in American gambling, the actual Park Place and Boardwalk Corner that Monopoly players have been buying and mortgaging in board games for generations. A closure there wouldn't just be another line item in a quarterly earnings report. It would be the kind of symbolic ending that gets covered well outside the gambling trade press precisely because of how much cultural weight that specific address carries. Number 4. Bally's Chicago. Speaking of Bally's juggling too many balls at once, its temporary casino in Chicago deserves its own spot on this list, mostly because it comes with an actual deadline attached. Since 2023, Bally's has operated a temporary gaming floor inside the historic Medina Temple in downtown Chicago, while construction continues on its permanent $1.8 billion integrated resort nearby. Temporary casinos are usually just that, temporary, existing to generate revenue and build a customer base while the real building goes up. The problem is, the real building isn't ready, and the temporary arrangement is running out of runway. According to Bally's own leadership, the company will be forced to close the Medina Temple Casino in September 2026 unless it receives an extension from Illinois lawmakers. A bill that would grant Bally's multiple extensions to keep the temporary casino operating beyond that fall deadline was pending in the state legislature as of early 2026. But pending legislation is not the same thing as passed legislation, and Bally's is essentially betting an entire revenue stream on politicians in Springfield acting in time. To Bally's credit, the temporary Medina Temple Casino has actually performed well, ranking among the top 5 highest-grossing casinos in the entire state of Illinois in 2025, alongside newer properties like Wind Creek Chicago Southland and Hard Rock Casino Rockford. That's the frustrating part of this particular story. This isn't a property failing because nobody wants to gamble there. It's a property that could get shut down purely because of a permitting and construction timeline that hasn't kept pace with a legally mandated closure date. If the extension bill doesn't pass, Chicago loses a genuinely profitable casino for reasons that have nothing to do with profitability at all. Illinois' broader casino market has actually been thriving, with statewide commercial gaming revenue climbing 17% to a record $3.42 billion, driven partly by the 7 new casinos authorized under a 2019 expansion law, Bally's Medina Temple among them. That context makes the September deadline look even stranger from the outside. A market regulator isn't shutting Bally's Chicago down because the numbers don't work. A calendar is shutting it down because the permanent building isn't finished, and the temporary permit was only ever meant to bridge a gap that's now stretched on longer than anyone originally planned. Number 3, Downtown Grand Las Vegas. Not every casino on this list is losing money because of shifting consumer habits or competition down the street. Sometimes it's just old-fashioned debt trouble, and that's exactly what's happening at Downtown Grand Las Vegas. In early 2026, the property's owners defaulted on a $90 million loan, a default serious enough to trigger receivership proceedings under Nevada's Uniform Commercial Real Estate Receivership Act. For anyone unfamiliar with what receivership actually means, it's essentially the real estate version of a court-appointed babysitter. When a property defaults on a loan of that size, a court can appoint an independent receiver to take over management of the asset, collect revenue, and make decisions on behalf of creditors while the underlying default gets sorted out, often through a forced sale. It's not automatically a death sentence for a casino. Plenty of Las Vegas properties have passed through receivership or bankruptcy and come out the other side under new ownership, still very much open for business. But it is a clear, formal signal that the previous ownership structure has failed, and that whoever ends up running the place next gets to make that decision with a clean slate, including the option of deciding the location simply isn't worth keeping open as a casino at all. Downtown Grand sits in the older, less flashy part of Las Vegas's gaming scene, competing for attention against Circa's flashier modern rebuild and a wave of renovated Fremont Street properties. Downtown Las Vegas as a whole has had a mixed few years, with some properties investing heavily and others quietly falling behind. A $90 million default puts Downtown Grand squarely in the falling behind category, and receivership proceedings tend to move on their own unpredictable timeline. Nobody currently knows exactly how this one resolves. That uncertainty itself is the reason it lands this high on the list. Downtown Grand's story is also a useful reminder that the Las Vegas Strip and downtown Las Vegas are, in a lot of ways, 2 separate industries wearing the same city's name. The Strip has spent the last few years absorbing enormous capital projects, new arenas, expanded convention space, and headline-grabbing attractions, while downtown properties compete more directly on price and nostalgia for gamblers who remember Fremont Street before it got a canopy, and a light show. Boyd Gaming, which operates several locals-focused and downtown Las Vegas properties, reported second quarter 2026 revenue that stayed roughly flat overall, but specifically noted softness in its Las Vegas locals and downtown segments. Downtown Grand's default didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened inside a corner of the Las Vegas gaming market that's already showing signs of strain more broadly, even while the Strip itself keeps posting relatively steady numbers. Number 2, Crazy Moose Mount Lake Terrace and Silver Dollar Mill Creek. Now we get into genuinely scheduled closures. Not speculation about what might happen, but actual dates already filed with state regulators. Maverick Gaming, a Kirkland, Washington-based operator with a portfolio of 27 properties spread across Washington, Nevada, and Colorado, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on July 14, 2025, listing between $100 million and $500 million in total liabilities. The company blamed a mix of factors, including intensifying competitive pressure from tribal gaming and broader industry conditions squeezing smaller regional operators. Maverick's bankruptcy has been playing out in slow motion for over a year now, with successive rounds of closures hitting its Washington cardroom locations specifically. The first wave came almost immediately, with 4 Seattle-area card rooms: Dragon Tiger Casino in Mount Lake Terrace, Palace Casino in Lakewood, Silver Dollar in Renton, and Roman Casino in Seattle, all shutting down in July 2025. Those closures came partly because Washington gaming regulators declined to approve a centralized surveillance system that Maverick argued it needed to compete with larger casinos operating more advanced monitoring technology. Now, 2 more Washington properties are set to disappear. According to worker adjustment and retraining notification filings submitted to state regulators, Maverick is permanently closing the Crazy Moose Casino in Mount Lake Terrace and the Silver Dollar Casino in Mill Creek, both effective July 31, 2026. Combined, the closures are expected to lay off well over 100 employees, the majority of them table game dealers, alongside hospitality and security staff. Crazy Moose takes the bigger hit, with around 82 positions eliminated, while Silver Dollar Mill Creek accounts for roughly 41 more. That closure date, again, is July 31st, 2026. If you're watching this video anywhere close to real time, that's not a hypothetical future event. That's a closure that's either about to happen or has just happened by the time you're hearing about it. What's notable about Maverick's case is how methodical the unwinding has been compared to a lot of casino bankruptcies, which tend to end in one dramatic sale or shutdown announcement. Maverick has instead closed its Washington card rooms in staggered waves over the better part of 2 years, all while insisting the rest of its portfolio, including 4 rural Nevada casinos in Elko and West Wendover, and its properties in Colorado, remains open and unaffected by the Chapter 11 proceedings. Whether that separation holds for the entire remaining portfolio or whether more Washington closures eventually follow the ones already announced is very much an open question that will depend on how the rest of the bankruptcy court proceedings play out over the coming months. Number 1, Silver Dollar SeaTac Casino, which brings us to the casino that has, quite literally, already died first. The Silver Dollar SeaTac Casino, another Maverick gaming property located near Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, was originally scheduled to close back in December 2025. That closure got pushed back while Maverick negotiated a potential sale of the property as part of its ongoing bankruptcy proceedings, the kind of last-minute lifeline that sometimes saves a struggling business and sometimes just delays the inevitable. In this case, it delayed the inevitable. Whatever deal was on the table for Silver Dollar SeaTac ultimately fell apart, and Maverick filed a new WARN notice confirming the property would close for good on June 30, 2026, laying off approximately 65 employees across gaming operations, hospitality, and security roles. Unlike every other entry on this list, this one isn't a prediction, a warning sign, or a looming deadline. As of this video, it has already happened. The doors are shut. The slot machines have gone quiet. Out of every casino we've covered today, Silver Dollar SeaTac was the one that actually crossed the finish line first. There's something almost fitting about a casino near an airport being the one to close first, given how much of the broader story here connects back to travel patterns changing across the entire industry. People used to treat a stop at the casino as part of a trip. Increasingly, especially at smaller regional properties without a destination resort pull, That habit just isn't sticking the way it used to. Silver dollar SeaTac's ending also captures something true about most casino closures that doesn't always come through in the headlines. They rarely happen fast, and they rarely happen cleanly. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow sequence of a bankruptcy filing, a scheduled closure date, a delay for sale negotiations, a fallen-through deal, and then a final, quieter closure that generated far less news coverage than the original announcement almost a year earlier. Most casino deaths look exactly like that. Not a dramatic implosion, just a long, administrative fade that ends with a warn notice and 65 people looking for new jobs. The pattern underneath all 7. Step back from the individual stories, and a shared thread runs through almost every casino on this list. None of these properties are failing because gambling itself is unpopular. Commercial gaming revenue in the United States hit record levels in 2026, and tribal gaming posted a record $46.2 billion in gross gaming revenue for fiscal year 2025. The industry, broadly speaking, is not struggling. Individual properties within it are. What connects Coushatta's debt-financed hotel tower, Bally's stretched-thin corporate attention, Downtown Grand's defaulted loan, and Maverick's slow-motion Washington bankruptcy is that each one made a specific bet, whether on a big renovation, an expansion into new markets, or a business model built around smaller cardroom-style gaming. And each bet is now colliding with rising costs, shifting consumer habits, or straightforward competition from bigger, better capitalized rivals. Nevada gaming regulator Mike Dreitzer put it simply when discussing the smaller Washington cardroom model that Maverick built its business around, noting that operators lacking the advanced surveillance and scale of larger casinos have struggled to compete effectively as the broader industry has consolidated around bigger, flashier properties with deeper pockets and more sophisticated technology. Atlantic City's situation adds another layer entirely. Every property there is watching New York's expanding downstate casino market with real anxiety, since a new competitor an hour's drive from Manhattan threatens to peel off exactly the customer base Atlantic City has depended on for decades. That competitive pressure explains why even a healthy market can produce 2 money-losing casinos in a single quarter, and why a chairman like Bally's Soo Kim is already talking publicly about alternative uses for prime boardwalk real estate. There's a broader lesson buried in all of this that applies well beyond the 7 properties on today's list. Casinos are unusually capital-intensive businesses, sitting on top of unusually predictable math. The house edge means a well-run casino should, in theory, make money in almost any economic environment. When one doesn't, the explanation is rarely, gambling stopped being popular. It's almost always something more specific. Too much debt taken on for an expansion, a competitor that opened closer to your customer base than expected, or a business model, like Maverick's smaller Washington card rooms, that simply can't keep up once the rest of the market modernizes around it. What happens to a town when the casino leaves? It's worth pausing on what actually happens once one of these properties closes for good, because the consequences rarely stay contained to a company's balance sheet. Washington State's Employment Security Department has to process each round of Maverick layoffs individually, and workers in roles like table game dealer or casino security don't always transfer easily into other industries without significant retraining. Local economies built around a steady stream of casino employees spending paychecks at nearby businesses feel the loss too, even when the closure only involves 100 or so jobs at a single property. Atlantic City has lived through this exact scenario before, at a much larger scale, when multiple casinos closed within a few years of each other in the mid-2000s. City and state officials there have spent the years since trying to diversify the local economy beyond casino revenue, specifically because they learned, the hard way, how quickly a gaming-dependent local economy can unravel when even 1 or 2 anchor properties go dark. That history is part of why current reporting keeps circling back to which Atlantic City casino might be next. Nobody in that city needs a reminder of how painful the last wave of closures actually was. Even a smaller, quieter closure like Silver Dollar SeaTac carries a version of this same ripple effect on a proportionally smaller scale. 65 workers losing their jobs at a single card room might not make national news, but for those employees and for the surrounding businesses that depended on shift workers grabbing lunch or gas nearby, the closure is every bit as disruptive locally as a bigger Atlantic City shutdown is regionally. Scale changes the size of the headline. It doesn't change the basic shape of the problem for the people actually living through it. A new threat nobody saw coming. There's one more piece of context worth adding because it's starting to touch nearly every casino on this list, not just the ones already struggling. Prediction markets, online platforms where users trade contracts on the outcome of real-world events, including sports, have exploded in popularity over the past couple of years, capturing an estimated 8 to 12% of total U.S. online sports wagering handle in the first quarter of 2026 alone, more than double the share they held just 2 quarters earlier. Tribal gaming leaders in particular have sounded the alarm. James Siva, chairman of the California Nation's Indian Gaming Association, has warned that if prediction markets keep expanding at their current pace, tribal casinos nationwide could see gross gaming revenue decline by as much as 25% within a single year, a hit he's compared to completely defunding federal programs like the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Indian Health Service. The American Gaming Association has separately estimated that prediction markets have already diverted more than $1.2 billion in tax revenue away from states and tribal governments that would otherwise have collected it through regulated gaming channels. To be clear, the tribal gaming sector as a whole is still growing, not shrinking, with the National Indian Gaming Commission reporting a record $46.2 billion in gross gaming revenue for fiscal year 2025. But growth at the industry level and stability at any individual property are two very different things, and prediction markets represent exactly the kind of unregulated, lower-margin competitor that could accelerate problems at properties already running thin, like Coushatta, faster than anyone currently expects. It's one more reason a list like this one is worth revisiting regularly, rather than treating as a fixed final ranking. So, which one actually dies first? By the strict definition of dies first, meaning which property has already ceased operations, the answer is Silver Dollar SeaTac Casino, closed for good as of June 30th, 2026. But if you're asking which currently open casino on this list is most likely to be the next confirmed domino to fall, the smart money points toward Crazy Moose Mount Lake Terrace and Silver Dollar Mill Creek, both carrying a hard closure date of July 31st, 2026, already filed with state regulators, rather than just rumored in industry gossip. Everything else on this list still has at least a theoretical path to survival. Downtown Grand could find a buyer through receivership. Bally's Chicago could get its legislative extension. Bally's Atlantic City could turn a corner if New York's competitive threat takes longer to materialize than expected. Coushatta could simply grow its way out of its legacy tower debt load the same way plenty of profitable businesses work through a rough financing stretch. Golden Nugget Atlantic City's rough quarter could turn out to be exactly that, one rough quarter. None of these outcomes are guaranteed in either direction, which is precisely what makes this list worth revisiting in a year to see who's actually left standing. A year from now, some of these 7 names will likely still be open, business as usual, while others may have already joined Silver Dollar SeaTac on the list of casinos that used to exist. Predicting exactly which is which, with any real confidence, is harder than any single quarterly earnings report can tell you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe for more videos just like this one, and drop a comment letting us know which of these 7 casinos you think will actually be the next to go.